We are responsible for issuing the arrest warrant, conducting the arraignments, and if required, a preliminary felony hearing on the matter. And it's interesting because we'll do the felony preliminary hearing where we're just making a determination if probable cause exists to sustain the charge. If the judge decides or makes the decision that the probable cause does exist, then we'll hold the individual for action of the Chautauqua County Grand Jury. If we don't see probable cause, then we'll dismiss the charge. But as a past district attorney, you know well that even if the judge dismisses the criminal felony complaint, the district attorney can still bring the matter before the grand jury.
That's correct.
That sort of covers the general aspect of what we get into.
Well, let's start with the criminal part of it. And you briefly touched on some of the things you do, even in the most serious matters. First of all, it is you or someone in your position that actually sees a felon for the first time on their arraignment, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, Reed.
Oh, Reed's on. Judge will come back. Apparently, Reed Powers is calling in from somewhere where it's warm and sunny, or at least it's warm. I don't know if it's sunny. Reed, are you there?
Hello.
Reed, how are you?
Hey, terrific. I hear you have a judge on.
We do. Where are you at?
Judge,
Fine, Reed.
I'm on. We're just rolling into New York here.
Are you really?
I'm getting ready to take off for the wonderful outdoors. Again, we're going down. We had a wonderful trip down to Nassau and back to the Bahamas.
So you had some nice, warm, sunny weather?
Oh, we sure did. And I'm on the Norwegian Gem right now. And of course, up here in New York, it ain't any great shakes.
No, I understand it's raining there, is it not?
Yes, it is.
But you had a nice trip?
Yes. Pardon?
You had a nice trip?
Oh, it's a dreamy trip. Best trip I ever had. Well, when you're on the Norwegian ships, you always have a nice trip. I have a special guest here I wanted to introduce to you. His name is Filippo Bertuzzi, and he happens to be the guy in charge of this ship. He is the top of the top of this ship. He runs the ship. The captain is more ceremonial, I think, than actual hands-on action. The guests will meet him. He takes care of all the food, all the beverages, all the entertainment, all the housing, everything that goes on in this ship, excepting if the ship rolls over. Then the captain's in charge. And these cannot roll over, incidentally. It's impossible for these to sink, unlike the Titanic.
Actually, it would be the deckhands that take over when the ship is sinking to put down the lifeboats. But nonetheless, it must be a very daunting job to have that responsibility to make sure everything on the ship
well,
runs.
The ship, unfortunately, the ships don't go down. So, at any rate, we're all set here. I want to introduce...
Reed? Well, apparently Reed is in an area in New York City where he's either been mugged or he's lost the phone service that he was on. We hope it's the latter rather than the former. That was Reed, who's apparently had another very enjoyable vacation on another cruise. He cruises more than most sailors do. But anyway, Judge, well, we were talking about the first responder, for lack of a better term, where you would see a criminal defendant, particularly in what we've been talking about, a felony defendant, for the first time. And at that time, you have to make sure that that defendant is aware of his or her rights, correct?
Absolutely.
Afford him or her the right to counsel, which is a very important step.
And if they can't afford one and are financially qualified, then we must assign that person free legal counsel.
And you do that.
Absolutely.
And then if a felony hearing is necessary, one is conducted.
That's correct.
And felony hearing really is a criminal proceeding just like a criminal trial, with the exception of no jury.
Correct, and the level of proof.
However, in order to do that, one needs to be very well trained and qualified. Could you tell the viewing audience, please? It's not like you got elected from walking off of a cornfield and became a town justice. There are some very serious training requirements and regimens, are there not?
That's correct.
Could you tell the viewing audience, please, the type of training that you have to undergo?
When you're first elected, whether you are a non-attorney or an attorney judge, you must go through a basic training and certification program, which at the present time consists of three weekends, three-day weekends. After each weekend, Saturday mornings, I believe it was, you have to pass a written test. After your basic certification, then every year you're required to go back for formal training to obtain 6 hours, credit hours, which is usually 8 to 16, and sometimes longer hours of continuing education, again being subject to written examinations. The only difference there on the advanced training, the attorney judges aren't required to take a written exam as we are, but that's changing. And in New York State, in their wisdom, has decided that town and village justices need to be a little more qualified. And by that, they're saying that soon the requirement will be that an individual to even consider running for the office must have at least 2 years of college, must be at least 25 years of age. And as far as the training is concerned, they're looking at 3 solid weeks of a basic certification program and making the attorney judges pass written tests as well.
That's a nice segue, because I'm a member of actually I'm the chair of the New York State Bar Association Criminal Justice Section. And as that chair, one of the issues that we had to tackle last year was having local justices required to be attorneys. And fortunately, the Bar Association, both our section and the Bar Association itself, recommended against that, and that yet has not occurred. However, the training you've described, and this is my experience as well, by the way, the training that the town justices undergo in the criminal law and civil, well, not necessarily civil procedure, but in the criminal law, is actually more extensive than most attorneys have. And there's perhaps 100 attorneys in Chautauqua County, but not all 100 attorneys practice any form of criminal law. In fact, as you know, Judge, there's probably very few that regularly practice criminal law. And as a consequence of that, if you only need to be an attorney and not have to pass certification tests because you're an attorney, you actually run the risk of having somebody that may have 7 years of college but that doesn't know a lick of criminal law. Unfortunately, the state magistrates have also worked hard to make sure that the system remains essentially as it is. Could you outline some of those efforts and what you think are the benefits of having non-lawyer justices in the justice court system?
That's a big question.
It is. It's actually a compound question, but I'd like to do those and try to confuse the witness.
The fact that you do have a law degree, as you mentioned, doesn't mean that you can run in and sit down and you know everything there is. As a non-lawyer attorney, I find that I spend probably more hours, I think, in researching case matters, looking at case law, etc. But history has showed that as far as being able to competently conduct oneself on the bench, that there's really no difference between the performance we see from non-lawyer attorneys as we do attorney judges. As a matter of fact, you did point out that a lot of attorneys come in to the court system as a justice in the lower court system with no criminal law background. They're civil attorneys. And it's really like starting from scratch.
It is.
And we see that in our courts every day with attorneys that come in without that training, and we're sort of educating them in the system, which is sort of ironic in a way.
It is.
As far as ethical issues, we find statistically, and I say this because I was a member of the New York State Magistrates Executive Board of Directors for 3 years, and the chairman of the district court committee, etc., which ties into what you were saying that the Bar Association was dealing with last year. But as far as ethical issues, there's statistics show that there's no more problems with attorney judges than there are with non-attorney judges. Attorney judges commit the same type of errors that non-attorney judges do, and in some cases maybe more. Look at Judge Walker, the situation with our top judge years ago. The educational issue